Down that road, a desperate defense. During the spring equinox, Imperial heroes used the Sentinel Gate to travel to Gambit and Caraman to intercept a force of Jotun Yagara led by Wallace of Sarcombe, the partner of the Yagara war leader, Stephen of Sarcombe. The Yagara seized the initiative in the area, ultimately smoothing the way to their capture of the town of Ryota. The Empire managed to secure the area for long enough that the defenders of the territory, especially the garrison of Fort Braden, could recover and regroup. While the Lysambrians stole a march on the Empire, the ability of the Corazon raiders to sweep across the territory was greatly limited. This does not stop them from trying, however. The Corazon focus their attention on attacking wagons transporting mithril from Briante and white granite from Demata, but they don't spare freeborn paradors and caravans. The garrison of Fort Braden, supported by some of the local Dormiro, does their best to intercept these raids. But even with the advantages secured during the battle at Ryota, it is not enough. But then, something else begins to affect the campaign in Caraman. Things start to go wrong for the orcs of the Lysambrian hills. Seriously wrong. During the spring equinox, a band of freeborn magicians placed a subtle enchantment over Caraman, autumn magic, channeled to help the Cinnabar Hills defend themselves against the raiders. Anyone trying to avoid the raiders finds themselves guided to safe paths. Some receive unexpected warning that a group of thieves is nearby and are able to take steps to secure themselves and their possessions before the orcs arrive. Misfortune and ill luck plague the Corazon at every turn. Their scouts fall afoul of the Fort Briaden garrison, or stumble into the path of a group of Kohan, or become confused and take entirely the wrong path on one of the mountain roads. Under normal circumstances, the enchantment would not be potent enough to protect the Great Mine or the Dalmatian cliffs, but coupled with the Empire's successes outside Ryota, it completely stymies the Corazon raiders and also ensures that all the mithril and white granite reach the Empire. Imperial magicians also act to defend Briante and Demata in more concrete ways, summoning magical castles from the Summer Realm to rise in the hills of northern Caraman. These bastions of stone and ice provide safe havens for the tired soldiers of Fort Braden. They also supply additional garrisons, snow-haired ogres and iron-toothed bearfolk, who fight to preserve the hills where their enchanted fortifications rise. But it is not only the Empire that receives aid from the Summer Realm. A legion of elven warriors, under the command of the red and gold banners of the Fields of Glory, fight alongside the Hiero, while the Lysambrian Jotun largely ignore the magical fortifications in Briante and Demata. These supernatural knights seek out every opportunity to clash with the warriors of Kathankanai, somewhat blunting their effectiveness in helping the orcs to conquer Caraman. With the Knights of the Summer Realm too busy fighting each other, and the Corazon raids faltering, the responsibility to support the Lysambrian Jotun falls to the Yagara that fight under the banner of Stephen of Sarcombe. Instead of returning to Bragisland to support Matilda Fisher, the former Mournfolk remain in Caraman. Rather than fighting alongside the Hiero or the Escuta, however, the Yagara warband throws most of its support behind the Corazon raiders. Where the orcs are focused on securing resources for the Lysambrians, Stephen seems driven by a need to find out precisely who was responsible for the death of his beloved Wallace during the spring equinox. He has apparently sworn a furious oath that he and his Yagara will not leave Caraman until those who are responsible pay for what they have done. At Nestor's Bounty. Despite the citadels and the autumn aegis, however, the defenders of Fort Braden are stretched almost to breaking point. The Lysambrian Jotun consolidate their hold over Gambit and press east into Jade Range, quickly overwhelming the settlements in the western part of that region. There is very little death. The three Lysambrian armies seem to be going out of their way to reduce the number of casualties they cause in favour of taking land and overwhelming the defenders. There is one decisive engagement in Jade Range, a pitched battle for control of the largest settlement in the region, Nestor's bounty. While the Hiero are at the forefront and the Corazon spread their raids across the plains, the Third Army takes a slightly different tack. The Escuta still show signs that up until recently they were an army of the southern Jotun. The story of why it now marches under the Phoenix banner of Lysambria is not generally known, but march it does. Led by the mystic Lefsnir Red-Armed, the Escuta number among them charismatic Godi, thralls trained in the physics art, and even a smattering of magicians wise in the ways of healing. While the healers minister to the bodies of their fellow Lysambrian orcs, the Godi minister to their spirits, preaching the Lysambrian interpretation of the seven virtues and kindling something akin to religious zeal among them. The orcs are fired up with talk of pride and courage, and the bonds of loyalty between the three armies and their allies are tempered and strengthened. They preach the vital role of vigilance in understanding an enemy, and of how the wise look for opportunities to employ what they have learned. They talk of the just reward that comes from fighting their enemies, and of the ultimate ambition to reclaim all the land that once belonged to the Lysambrian forebears. Their words are powerful, and Nestor's bounty falls, and the Jade Range is taken, and the exhausted defenders fall back again to Braden's Yassi. The good news for the Freeborn is that this new virtuous zeal does nothing to change their attitude to the conquered Freeborn. They seem to still be guided by their particular take on the virtue of prosperity, and continue to offer their unique version of the more familiar Jotun choice. Join the Lysambrians, keep their land and their possessions, but agree to accept the conquerors as their rulers, swearing an oath of loyalty and offering a portion of their wealth to the orcs, or simply leave, with nothing save the clothes on their backs, a few sentimental keepsakes, and as much food as they can carry. Loyalty or exile, with death reserved only for those courageous few who refuse to choose either way. The steady stream of refugees from Karaman into Madruga that began after the winter solstice soon turns into a flood. Look to the hills. With Jade Range and Gambit both secured, the Lysambrian Jotun turn their attention to the hills and mountains. Some of their allies know the high places of Karaman well. The orcs that once lived in the passes overlooking Liathavan joined the western orcs some time ago after all. The raids against the Dalmatian cliffs and the great mines of Briante may have failed to acquire any white granite or mithril, but they have provided valuable scouting information to the orcs. Away from the grasslands and the best maintained roads, it is no easy matter to travel through Karaman, as the Civil Service Assessment of 382 EY pointed out. The caravans that carry Bourse resources from Karaman to Madruga travel predictable routes, because there are no alternatives, and that leaves them vulnerable. Worse, perhaps, is the news that the garrison of Fort Braden is nearing its breaking point. They have been holding off the Lysambrian Jotun for 6 months now, and that strain is beginning to show. They fought the Jotun before, of course, but this time something is different. The Lysambrian Jotun have taken to the plains. The farms and the villages that support the hill-dwelling freeborn families and the crucial fort in Braden's Yassi. Replacing those brave soldiers who fall trying to slow the Lysambrian advance is becoming more and more difficult. Emergency supplies are available from Mornwald to Sato and Madruga, but getting them to the defenders of Fort Braden can prove something of a challenge, especially in the face of the fast-moving Corazon raiders. To conquer Karaman, the Lysambrian Jotun need to only capture one of Braden's Yassi, Serra de Marta, or Serra Briante, and the orcs know that, and the defenders of Karaman know that. They have taken 2/5 of the territory without suffering any notable casualties. Their main opposition has been weakened by months of fighting a slow retreat back into the hills. Unless something changes, it seems inevitable that Karaman will fall to the orcs of the Lysambrian hills. Game information. The presence of Fort Braden and the 2 frozen citadels prevented them from pushing into the northern regions this season, but only just. The Lysambrian Jotun now control both Gambit and Jade Range. Their control of these 2 regions has some strategic implications for the Empire. Armies travelling to or from Segura will need to do so via Madruga, which may limit their ability to move freely. The Corazon had been raiding Karaman, supported by Stephen of Sarkhan's Mornwald Yagara. Thanks to the efforts of Imperial heroes during the spring equinox and the autumn magic placed on the territory during the spring equinox, these raids have had only limited effect. No personal resources have been impacted, and the Bourse resources have not had their production reduced. This state of affairs is unlikely to continue. The only reason the white granite and mithril remained untouched was the Empire's partial victory during the spring equinox. The victory alone is not enough to prevent the Corazon raiding. Indeed, there is some evidence that under normal circumstances, the Corazon are now much more effective at raiding Bourse materials than they have ever been, perhaps as part of the legacy of whatever it was the Lysandrian Jotun achieved in Segura. If they continue their raids with the same fervour, it is likely they will be able to claim half the production of both the Great Mines and the Dalmatian Cliffs in the coming season.